Welcome to the first edition of the Masterclass by productgrow.org. Introducing first Sheta Chatterjee. Hi, Sheta. Uh, what do you
Hello.
so Sheta is a product design leader. She has led design at early stage Uber when she was leading part of the driver growth team. Then she led design at Paper, Dropbox Paper, especially the Paper growth team at Dropbox. Currently, she is leading design for Lyft growth team in San Francisco. Introducing Shruti. I think most of you in India, especially in the design and product community, would be familiar with Shruti. Shruti kind of started experiencing. Hey, Shruti. Shruti started experiencing growth design with housing. So she kind of was thrown in the midst of the fire hose of growth at housing.com. But she currently heads design at Bounce. We talk with early stage growth at Uber, where you were leading driver growth, right? You're part of some of the most successful experiments at Uber.
As many of you know, in ride sharing for drivers, there's a ton of different legal requirements and just a lot of documentation. You have to provide vehicle information. You have to get your vehicle inspected. You have to go through a background check. So it's a very hard process. And Uber is also an international company. So every country has different regulations. Even cities within the US have different regulations. And so we lose a lot of drivers in the very beginning stages when they're onboarding because there's so many requirements. And these are people who are just, they want to try it out, but there is naturally so much friction in that process. So a big focus for driver growth was making onboarding easier and more frictionless. And so we did a lot of different experiments, like finding ways to basically you can take a photo of your vehicle insurance instead of having to input information or having to go somewhere and get that information approved. We've done a lot of you can actually do your own vehicle inspection in some cities in the US. Uh, and there's a lot of different things that we had tried within onboarding to just reduce that friction as much as possible. In design, you can try a lot of different versions, right? So there was one version of onboarding where it's like you put 5 steps into one, and like the hypothesis is that that feels like one step. And so we tried it, but it actually feels like a very heavy one step, especially depending on what information is there. And so what we actually did is break it out into many steps, but that in itself felt more frictionless because it was like one thing at a time. And so that was really helpful.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, what do you consider onboarding success?
Yes. So essentially, there was when you finish the application, but what we actually used as our North Star metric was a first trip. So when a driver takes a first trip, it's more than just finishing the process. So actually, after a driver has gone through the process, there's a 50%, at least when I worked there was a 50% drop off to taking your first trip. And so then that showed us that growth is more than just, that first, like getting the sign up. Like it is really the entire early life cycle of a user. And the way we defined it was the first 28 days. So we invested in driver education, helping just reduce the anxiety. The second was investing in referrals. So there are multiple channels for getting people onto your platform, right? So you have organic, people who naturally come in. You have paid. You have all these different ads that you put up that people come in through. Um, but a really big channel for ride sharing and many other products, but really for getting drivers was referrals. Because if you're a driver and you refer someone else, they're more likely to retain a lot higher because they know somebody who's already on the platform. And so Uber invested significantly in referrals in a lot of different ways.
I want to quickly check in with you on the onboarding at early stages of Browns. There were very similar challenges, like
So I think, yeah, our use case is very, we only needed the KYC and not any other details as such. But a driving license was extremely crucial for us, and we kind of have the same metric that she's talking about, which is it's not the success of how many people are signed up to our app, but it's more about getting the time it takes for the user to sign up, to fill up your KYC, for the KYC to be successful and to take the ride. So that time mattered for us. Bounce has grown organically, right? So they would see these yellow bikes on the street, they would go, they would check it out, and they would install the app. and they would start filling up their KYC there itself. So, and their expectation was that the KYC will get uploaded immediately, will get accepted, and then I can take a ride. But that was not what was happening on ground. So we saw a lot of drop-offs there, and since it was a new service and people were not even aware of the service, it was more important for us to sell the service at that point, right? So getting KYC was not as important as telling them that we have bikes near you. We have a service where you can pick up a bike from exactly where you are and drop it in. Few experiments basically that we did was, telling the users how to click the image, how to get the image right, what is it that we're looking for in the image. So there we needed to build our own custom camera, because we with the systems camera we had challenges when we could not add these things. Other than that, we worked on experiments wherein we started telling the users why their KYC was rejected. So there was no re-upload flow. They would have to call our customer care. So we opened up a re-upload flow wherein, if we tell them that this particular part of the KYC was blurred, then can you please re-upload it again, and things like that. So that was one of the few experiments that we did. And of course, this was all like we had to go on the street, we had to see these use cases. We spoke to a lot of users to try and understand what we were doing wrong. So a few of the basic things that we worked on was these pieces. Also things like in India, rewards work a lot. So we used to give bounce rewards for the first time users who were uploading their KYC. So now we've gone ahead and we've integrated basically our system with government database. So now we don't need any detail other than the driving license. So we just need the driving license number. So a 3-step process wherein you had to give front of the image, front of your KYC, back, and the selfie has now reduced to just the driving license number. We've kind of figured out different ways wherein we can reduce the amount of time that takes for you to one, upload, and two, for the KYC to get accepted or rejected. So these are a few of the experiments that we've been working on.
I think from both of your points, I think reducing that cognitive load or the mental load to make a decision became a crucial point to get people through the funnel. Can you tell me a little bit about the retention experiments at Bounce? Your take on retention over time. What are some things that really work? And we definitely want to know what did not work, and how did you overcome that?
Right. So the whole retention exercise actually, if you remember, we had done this exercise together wherein we had spoken to our customers and saying that we are from Bounce VIP team, and we wanna, we wanna kind of help you understand what will make you take more rides and stuff like that. And if you remember, the one point that came out predominantly was just ensure that your bikes are in good condition. I will come back.
Mhm.
Right, that was like the primary thing that came out. So that's what we did at that point when we started off. We wanted to build a loyalty program wherein we can get people, but at that point we did not see that was required, because we wanted to ensure, like people said, that bikes are there. So we focused more on the bike quality index, when what kind of bikes do we show to the users, at what point do we show, and stuff like that, right? So we focused more on the bike quality at that point. Once we kind of were a state where we achieved that, where most of our bikes were fueled and in good condition and stuff like that, then it's when we moved on to the next step, wherein experimenting with things which will help us increase the frequency of usage. Again, for us, that's loyalty, wherein instead of taking one ride a week, we want users to take 2 rides a week, right? So that's basically retention and habit forming for us. So the kind of people, the users that we had was usually the college going folks or the working people. A lot of them were first time office goers who haven't who don't have that much salary, who just want to go from point A to point B, save time and stuff like that, right? So the kind of users that we had a use case for taking more than one ride in a day. And like your working days are 5 days a week, so then that's why we figured we ensure that the person takes at least one ride a day using Bounce, and either to go to office or come back to home. One of that can be a Bounce ride, and that will help us form that into a habit. We started with a very basic experiment. So there was IPL going on at that point, and we wanted to see if we can leverage that to kind of get people to do more rides, to do more fueling, and keep the helmet back, and basically behavior forming as well at that point. I think we shipped that out in 2 days, wherein we decided that we want to build this experiment, and we kind of so it was kind of a leaderboard, and we didn't invest too much time in designing the leaderboard as such. We just there are a bunch of apps, games who actually have excelled the whole leaderboard concept. So we just kind of took learnings from there and then implemented a leaderboard. This was an in-app web page, so it did not even require like a release, and did not use any of the developers' time. So which is why it was a quick experiment that we want to see, even test out first to see if this could work for us. That turned out to be a success, where our retention increased quite a bit, and then we realized, okay, fine, looks like this is working. We moved on to, again, for us, we wanted, of course, the plan was to create like this beautiful loyalty program which has points, and then every good behavior gives you good karma points, bad behavior gives you bad karma points. It's like in our head that's what's going on. But being in the state where we are today, like we didn't want to, it didn't make sense for us to invest in that kind of a loyalty program
Mm.
again, to begin with. So we started with a smaller piece, which was basically Quest, wherein you have to take about 5 rides in a week, and you will earn rewards. Basically, you will earn scratch cards, and scratch card will have, yeah.
Your journey at Lyft, and how focusing on retention. What are some of the experiments you worked on? What is the strategy behind it?
Yeah. Lyft is really interesting because of the user focus. Like, you can think about your business in a lot of different ways. You can think about, in ride sharing, you can think about it like the cost per ride that you're getting, and you can really optimize for the short term, and be like, I want a user to take a ride to their Tinder date at night because they're going to take a nicer car, you know? And so I'm going to optimize for making sure that people spend the most money. That could be a possibility. The great thing about Lyft is that they do think about short-term things, but they do have a long-term vision. And what I love about Lyft is that they focus on a user lifetime value. So Lyft isn't in India, but within the Lyft app, you can actually see transit routes. So you can see public transportation. We do have bikes and scooters as well. And we believe that we want to make transportation better as a whole in multiple modalities, not just cars. And the reason why a lot of people ask me, like, why do you have transit information in the app? Like, that's dumb. Like, you just want people to go away and then, use the train instead of taking a ride share. And the reason is because if you become a trusted source of information for transportation, and a user is considering you and you care about them, you care about just in general their transit needs, they will consider you when they are going on the Tinder date at night, because then they'll take that social ride, and Lyft will always be top of mind. The other thing Lyft does that one of my teams that I lead is called memberships. Our membership is called Lyft Pink. So basically you pay $20 a month and you get 15% off all your rides, and you have multiple other perks. And it's funny that, Shruti was talking about not having a loyalty program, because we also decided to not have a loyalty program, but instead to have a membership-based program, because we want to give users consistent value every month. We want them to use, and there are other things included, like you get 3 free 30-minute bikes and scooter rides included with your membership. And so it's more than just rideshare. There's so much more happening. And so essentially, if you spend more than 100, I don't know the exact number, so don't quote me on it, like $120 on rideshare, which is very easy to do if you live in a city, or bikes and scooters included, you will be saving money on this plan. And so what's great is that you give users consistent value and the best experience possible. So that's another thing that we've done to really increase retention.
What are some of the key things that we should keep in mind to sustain growth across the organization?
Oh, wow. A few things. I think balancing short-term experimentation with longer-term thinking. And I know it's hard to think longer term, especially when you're in an early stage startup or you're just starting out, but that's super important so that you aren't just optimizing for short-term gains. Knowing what stage you are in your product's growth. So if you are in early pre-product market fit, to not open up the top of the funnel and just try to get more people and see what sticks, but to really focus in on understanding those users and building features that work for them, and then figuring out how to grow it. but know when it's time to grow something, and it isn't at the very beginning. Um, so, I mean, those are a couple of things. And then also with virality, to think about kind of that the desire piece of it and the ease piece of it. I think that's helped a lot, like just throughout my career working on virality.
Yeah, I think I agree with almost everything that Sheila just mentioned, right? I mean, we do since we are just a year old, we do a lot of experiments to see if it fits. First thing to see is that will it work for us or not? Because we're still new, we're still trying to figure out exactly who our users are. This will change. I'm sure it'll change over time when we will be 2 or 3 years old. I'm sure the kind of people who come in will also keep changing. So keeping a track of who are we designing for, what is this product trying to solve, and what kind of people are we trying to help while solving the problem, right? That being said, of course, Lyft, as I think it has a very good like user team, user research team, and things like that. I think in India we still kind of build user research, being more user centric as a process itself. What has helped me in at least figuring out what could work, what could not work, is ensuring that the entire organization is bought in with the whole concept of being more customer centric, being more user centric, which basically means that we don't do research alone, which means that we don't speak to users alone. We ensure that there is one business guy, or there's a product guy, or there's engineers in the room when you're trying to speak to users. So they empathize, they understand that the problems that we are trying to solve is real, and there is a lot of issues that people are facing. Let's try and solve for those, and of course, plan for maybe 6 months down the line, but implement more 1 week down the line, kind of thing. So I think that's kind of what's worked for Bounce especially.
So, that brings us to the end of the Q&A. I really want to thank the both of you for taking the time early, Saturday morning to the end, late Friday night, Sheta. I think it's past midnight over there. So, thank you so much, for taking the time.